Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into the ultimate consultant's playbook on why your security operations center will absolutely fail without formal authority and, more importantly, how to fix it. Look, if you've ever felt like your security team is operating with one hand tied behind its back, you're in exactly the right place. So let's jump right in. Here is our roadmap for taking your SOC from begging for permission to operating as an elite, empowered defensive unit. We'll hit the incident response crisis, codifying your charter, organizational alignment, adapting to modern cloud environments, the elite playbook, and then wrap up with key takeaways. Section 1, the incident response crisis. Okay, let's start with the nightmare scenario every single analyst dreads. What happens when the SOC detects a breach, but literally can't act? Picture this. It's 2 a.m. on a Saturday. Your alerts are flashing red. You've just detected ransomware moving laterally across the network. But instead of instantly quarantining the infected servers, you have to wake up a system administrator and wait for them to approve a change ticket. I mean, imagine you're the fire department, but while a house is burning down, you have to go find the owner to ask permission to use your hose. By the time you get a yes from a groggy sysadmin, there is absolutely nothing left to save but the ashes. It all comes down to this core truth. The SOC must execute its mission against constituency digital assets that almost always belong to someone else. You're monitoring and defending systems you don't own. Your team is tasked with protecting the entire constituency's digital footprint, the servers, the endpoints, the cloud infrastructure, but the actual ownership of those assets lies with completely different business units and IT departments. This inherent paradox is exactly why unwritten rules and friendly handshake agreements simply aren't enough. Section 2. Codifying your SOC charter. To solve this crisis, you just cannot rely on goodwill. You need a formal SOC charter. We're talking about a document signed by executives that grants the SOC the authority to exist, to procure resources, and to actually enact change. The crucial point here is that a charter eliminates all those dangerous misconceptions and stops your team from wasting time fighting internal turf wars. It's not a technical manual detailing how you do your job. It is a foundational governance document stating what your job is. When the CEO signs this, they are telling the entire organization, point blank, that the SOC has the mandate to act. When you're building this charter, you need essential elements codified so your analysts know exactly what they can and cannot do during a crisis. It needs to establish your unambiguous scope. What systems, users, and data are you actually protecting? It absolutely must grant the authority to deploy sensors and direct incident response actions, like isolating a host. And maybe most importantly, clearly defined SLAs with IT and help desk staff. You need to know exactly how fast IT is required to act when the SOC escalates a critical containment request. No more guessing. Section 3. Mastering organizational alignment. Now, let's talk about where the SOC sits on the org chart, because placement dictates power. Inheriting authority from different C-suite executives completely changes your operational reality. For example, if you report to the COO, you get a direct link to business operations, which is great, but you might just be viewed as overhead and really struggle for budget. Placing the SOC under the Chief Security Officer integrates you well with physical security, but that often leads to a skill mismatch, since CSOs usually lack deep IT experience. Setting under IT operations or a NOC, well, that offers shared resources, but creates a massive conflict of interest. The NOC wants 100% uptime, while the SOC might need to literally pull a critical system offline to stop a breach. So, the most common home for the SOC is under the CIO or CISO, but there's a huge catch here: an operations-focused CIO versus a compliance-focused CIO. If your SOC reports to a CIO who is focused purely on IT compliance and paperwork rather than a rapid operations tempo, you're going to lack credibility and you'll struggle to execute tactical incident handling. The ideal placement is under an operations-focused CISO who gets that security is an active, ongoing battle, not just an annual audit checkbox. When you build out a mature, notional, large, centralized SOC structure, you suddenly get specialized, dedicated lanes for incident triage, cyber threat intelligence, and security architecture. And because they're unified under clear SOC leadership, they aren't stepping on each other's toes. But here's the thing. This structure only works when the entire unit sits cleanly within an organizational hierarchy that actually respects and enforces its authority. Section 4. Adapting to modern environments. The rules of authority change drastically when we leave the on-premise network and move into the cloud. Securing authority in the cloud means you must explicitly extend your charter's reach. You have to define shared incident responsibilities with the cloud provider. You can't just assume your cloud vendor is handling everything. You need strict cloud SLAs that ensure if something goes horribly wrong, you're on the phone with a live engineer, not just waiting on some generic support email ticket. And tactically, your response has to adapt. In the cloud, shutting down an app or service principal is often way more effective than blocking an IP address. Your analysts need pre-approved authority to manipulate cloud identities because traditional network layer responses just won't scale anymore. If a threat actor compromises a cloud environment, blocking an IP is practically useless. They'll just spin up a new one in seconds. Instead, your team needs the authority to instantly disable a compromised service principal. The battlefield has completely shifted to the identity plane. Section 5. The Elite SOC Playbook. Let's contrast beginners with the pros, starting with the warning signs of an immature SOC. Are your analysts constantly begging IT for help? Is there ambiguity over who actually makes decisions during an active breach? If your analysts are spending half their shift politely begging IT to isolate a machine through a clunky ticketing system, you're already failing. And if other departments view you as an annoying roadblock rather than a critical defensive asset, your charter is either non-existent or completely toothless. During a critical cyber incident, the roles and decision-making authorities of an organization's senior leaders should be as clear as possible. You simply cannot afford to have multiple executives asserting conflicting roles while an adversary is encrypting your network. Imagine a major data exfiltration event happening right now. The CIO wants to keep the servers online for customers, legal wants to pull the plug to stop the data bleed, and the CISO is just caught in the middle. Without prior written authority dictating who makes the final call, you get paralysis. And paralysis always favors the attacker. It really boils down to this. Beginner SOCs wait for permission. Elite SOCs execute pre-approved actions. They don't hesitate. They rely on their C-suite signed charter to rapidly execute containment protocols without needing an emergency committee meeting. They've already done the hard work during peacetime. They have a playbook that says under these specific technical conditions, the SOC will isolate the host. No debate required. Now think about SOC organizational models based on constituency size. As your organization scales from a small business to a massive enterprise, your SOC's structure and required authorities have to scale with it. A tiny startup might just rely on security as an additional duty. As you grow to, say, 50,000 users, you transition into a centralized SOC model. And for massive global enterprises, you start seeing federated or coordinating SOCs. But regardless of where you fall, the fundamental requirement remains exactly the same. Your authority must match your operational footprint. So here are your actionable recommendations for maturity. This is your consultant's playbook. For a quick win, draft a one-page charter outlining core SOC functions this week and find a key C-suite champion to sign it. Medium term, align the SOC under an ops-focused CISO and establish formal SLAs with the NOC and IT help desk. And long term, embed SOC authority right into your cloud governance and SaaS contracts from day one. Section 6. Key takeaways. Let's distill everything we've covered. The SOC absolutely must have written authority to protect assets it doesn't own. A signed charter prevents turf wars and defines your response scope. Your organizational placement heavily dictates your power and budget. That authority has to explicitly extend to the cloud and SaaS platforms. And clear executive decision-making prevents that deadly paralysis during a breach. Without alignment and a signed charter, even the most technically gifted analysts are going to fail. Ultimately, a breach is still a breach. You can outsource the execution, but you can never outsource the accountability. Whether the incident happens on-premise or in the cloud, defending the constituency falls on you and your leadership. You can pay an MSP to monitor logs or a cloud vendor to host data, but if customer records end up on the dark web, regulators aren't blaming the vendor. They're blaming your executives. Accountability is always in-house. So if a catastrophic breach happens tonight, who truly has the final authority to stop it? Don't wait until the network is encrypted to find out. Now that you know how to establish authority, how will you actually structure your team to wield it effectively? Up next is Strategy 3, build a SOC structure to match organizational needs. Are you ready? Join us in our next explainer to find out. Until then, keep your defenses strong.